Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braje Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you all for coming today and braving the weather to be part of this morning program with on the anniversary day. I'm really grateful to get the opportunity to speak on Sri Sri Radharanath's anniversary day. Disclaimer, the last time I read this chapter, everyone fell asleep. So I apologize in advance if anybody feels like sleeping, but I will try to not put anyone off to sleep. So we're reading chapter 13 of Krishna book, which is the stealing of the boys and calves by Brahma, also known as the Brahma Vimohan Leela, which means the bewilderment of Lord Brahma. And this is a very special chapter because we know Krishna book is a summary of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And chapter 13 was the last chapter that Srila Prabhupada personally translated before leaving this world. So we're very grateful to have his commentary and his purports because that was the last opportunity. So chapter 13, which we will read, is a summary study of that chapter. And just to recap, so in the previous chapter, we ended off with the killing of Aghasura. And after that killing, after Krishna killed Aghasura, Sukadev Goswami was telling Parikshit Maharaj that the residents of Vrindavan only found out about this incident 1 year later. And Parikshit Maharaj asked a natural question, why did they find out only 1 year later? And then that's how this chapter begins. The stealing of the boys and calves by Brahma. Sukadev Goswami was very much encouraged when Maharaj Parikshit asked him why the cowherd boys did not discuss the death of Aghasura until after 1 year had passed. He explained thus, "My dear king, you are making the subject matter of the transcendental pastimes of Krishna fresher by your inquisitiveness. It is said that it is the nature of a devotee to constantly apply his mind, energy, words, ears, etc. in hearing and chanting about Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. And for one who is wrapped in hearing and chanting about Krishna, the subject matter never becomes hackneyed or old. That is the significance of transcendental subject matter in contrast to material subject matter. Material subject matter becomes stale, and one cannot hear a certain subject for a long time. He wants change. But as far as transcendental subject matter is concerned, it is called Nitya Nava Navayamana. This means that one can go on chanting and hearing about the Lord and never feel tired, but remain fresh and eager to hear more and more. It is the duty of the spiritual master to disclose all confidential subject matter to the inquisitive and sincere disciple." Thus, Sukadev Goswami began to explain why the killing of Aghasura was not discussed until 1 year had passed. So, we see that when an audience is very enthusiastic to hear, then the speaker becomes more enthusiastic to share Krishna consciousness, and then that makes the audience more enthusiastic. So it's a reciprocation. Sukadev Goswami told the king, "Now hear of the secret with attention. After saving his friends from the mouth of Aghasura and killing the demon, Lord Krishna brought his friends to the bank of the Yamuna and addressed them as follows. My dear friends, just see how this spot is very nice for taking lunch and playing on the soft sandy Yamuna bank. You can see how the lotus flowers in the water are beautifully blown and how they distribute their fragrance all around. The chirping of the birds along with the cooing of the peacocks, surrounded by the whispering of the leaves in the trees, combine and present sound vibrations that echo one another. And this just enriches the beautiful scenery created by the trees here. Let us have our lunch in this spot because it is already late and we are feeling hungry. Let the calves remain near us and let them drink water from the Yamuna. While we engage in our lunch taking, the calves may engage in eating the soft grasses that are in this spot." On hearing this proposal from Krishna, all the boys became very glad and said, "Certainly, let us all sit down here to take our lunch." There they then let loose the calves to eat the soft grass. Sitting down on the ground and keeping Krishna in the center, they began to open their lunch boxes brought from home. Lord Sri Krishna was seated in the center of the circle, and all the boys kept their faces toward him. They ate and constantly enjoyed seeing the Lord face to face. Krishna appeared to be the whirl of a lotus flower, and the boys surrounding him appeared to be its different petals. The boys collected flowers, leaves of flowers, and the bark of trees and placed their lunch on them, as well as in their boxes, and thus they began to eat their lunch, keeping company with Krishna. So this is such a beautiful point. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 8 of this chapter, Srila Prabhupada translates it as, "Like the whirl of a lotus flower surrounded by its petals and leaves, Krishna sat in the center, encircled by lines of his friends, who all looked very beautiful. Every one of them was trying to look forward toward Krishna, thinking that Krishna might look toward them. In this way, they all enjoyed their lunch in the forest." And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that to a pure devotee, Krishna is always visible. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Shanta Sadeva Hirdayeshu Vilokayanti, and as indicated by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada writes, if by accumulating pious activities one is raised to the platform of pure devotional service, Krishna is always visible in the core of one's heart. One who has attained such perfection is all beautiful in transcendental bliss. The present Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to keep Krishna in the center. For if this is done, all activities will automatically become beautiful and blissful. So it's a very nice picture. We used to have it just here, the picture of Krishna taking lunch before the pictures got replaced. But there was this beautiful, huge picture of Krishna taking lunch in the middle and all his cowherd boyfriends surrounding him. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments about this. This verse describes the arrangement for the picnic. Krishna sat in the center, encircled by lines of his friends. All the boys sat looking toward the center where Krishna was sitting. It was due to love that all the cowherd boys wanted to face Krishna. Krishna fulfilled their desire by employing his Sarva Sankalpa Shakti to make his face and limbs appear in all directions at once. Thus each boy thought, I am sitting in front, directly facing Krishna, but the other boys are sitting at a distance with their backs or sides to Krishna. This pastime illustrates a Bhagavad Gita verse. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. And when we were in Vrindavan a few years ago, we heard an ecstatic lecture by Radhanath Swami on this pastime. And he mentioned that Krishna, that all the cowherd boys thought that Krishna was only looking at them, like the rasa dance, how all the gopis thought Krishna is only dancing with me. And it's because Krishna can reciprocate with everyone personally, unlimitedly. And no human being can do what he can do. And in the next verse 9 of this chapter, Prabhupada translates, among the cowherd boys, some placed their lunch on flowers, some on leaves, fruits, or bunches of leaves, some actually in their baskets, some on the bark of trees, and some on rocks. This is what the children imagined to be their plates as they ate their lunch. Such a nice translation. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments for the next verse, verse 10. The boys would taste a little of the different items brought from their homes and then call out to their friends, "O Saka, Krishna, Sridam, Subal, see how tasty my food is." Krishna and the boys would then taste one another's food and laugh. Without being seen by anyone, one clever boy stuffed some jasmine flowers inside a samosa and said, "Oh friends, please taste this nice samosa." Believing his statement, a boy took the samosa and ate it. When he started making faces due to the bitter taste, the giver laughed and the receiver laughed too. So we'll continue reading. It's all very relishable. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur just finds more and more gems in this chapter and mines the jewels deeper. While taking lunch, each boy began to manifest different kinds of relations with Krishna, and they enjoyed each other's company with joking words. While Lord Krishna was thus enjoying lunch with his friends, his flute was pushed within the belt of his cloth on his right side, and his bugle and cane were pushed in on the left-hand side of his cloth. In his left palm, he was holding a lump of food prepared with yogurt, butter, rice, and pieces of fruit salad, which could be seen through his petal-like finger joints. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who accepts the results of all great sacrifices, was laughing and joking, enjoying lunch with his friends in Vrindavan. And thus the scene was being observed by the demigods from heaven. As for the boys, they were simply enjoying transcendental bliss in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is what's astounding about this pastime, that Krishna he only accepts offerings through sacrifice. So all the great sages will perform sacrifice to offer something and then take the remnants. But here, Krishna is playing with his friends and they're all sharing and taking each other's remnants, and it's laughing and joking. So the demigods are watching in awe. They can't believe what they're seeing. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of verse 13, "In the presence of Krishna's friendship, a devotee cannot have any fear." So the cowherd boys had this supreme friendship with Krishna, and therefore they could just enjoy and relish. At that time, the calves that were pasturing nearby entered into the deep forest, allured by new grasses, and gradually went out of sight. When the boys saw that the calves were not nearby, they became afraid for their safety, and they immediately cried out, "Krishna!" Krishna is the killer of fear personified. Everyone is afraid of fear personified, but fear personified is afraid of Krishna. By crying out the word Krishna, the boys at once transcended the fearful situation. Out of his great affection, Krishna did not want his friends to give up their pleasing lunch engagement and go searching for the calves. He therefore said, "My dear friends, you need not interrupt your lunch. Go on enjoying. I am going personally to find the calves." Thus Lord Krishna, still carrying the lump of yogurt and rice preparation in his left hand, immediately started to search out the calves in the caves and bushes. He searched in the mountain holes and in the forest, but nowhere could he find them. So, in the presence of Krishna's friendship, a devotee cannot have any fear. So Krishna personally took care of his cowherd boys and their calves. That's how sweet their relationship was, so sweet and intimate. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to verse 14 that Krishna doesn't have anything to do. All the affairs of the universal manifestation, cosmic manifestation, all of that's continuing by his energies. So he doesn't personally do anything, but here he is personally taking care of the cows and the cowherd boys and allowing his friends to continue enjoying their lunch so that they don't have to be disturbed. At that time, when Aghasura was killed and the demigods were looking on the incident with great surprise, Brahma, who was born of the lotus flower growing out of the navel of Vishnu, also came to see. He was surprised how a little boy like Krishna could act so wonderfully. Although he was informed that the little cowherd boy was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more of the Lord's glorious pastimes, and thus he stole all the calves and cowherd boys and took them to a different place. Lord Krishna, therefore, in spite of searching for the calves, could not find them, and he even lost his boyfriends on the bank of the Yamuna where they had been taking their lunch. In the form of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna was very little in comparison to Brahma, but because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could immediately understand that all the calves and boys had been stolen by Brahma. Krishna thought, Brahma has taken away all the boys and calves. How can I alone return to Vrindavan? The mothers will be aggrieved. So, Lord Brahma wanted to test the Supreme Lords because he's also stunned. He's seeing that the Lord is enjoying with all his friends like an ordinary human being. How can he be the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So he decided, let me see more of his power. And so he stole the calves and the cowherd boys. But Krishna could immediately understand what was going on. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to this verse 15, that Brahma is born materially from a lotus flower, and therefore he was subject to material bewilderment and the 4 defects, and forget Krishna's exalted position, because anybody who is born materially has the propensity to forget. And Prabhupada also writes something very interesting, which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, that Mahamaya can't actually touch Krishna's personal associates. So it was a Maya cowherd boys and calves that Brahma actually stole. Just like when Ravana tried to kidnap Sita and it wasn't the real Sita. So Prabhupada writes, Brahma wanted to take away Krishna's associates, but instead he took away some other boys and calves. Ravana wanted to take away Sita, but that was impossible, and instead he took away a Maya Sita. Similarly, Brahma took away Maya Barka, boys manifested by Krishna's Maya. Brahma could show some extraordinary opulence, but he could not show any extraordinary potency to Krishna's associates. That he would see in the very near future. Anyone materially born is subject to bewilderment. And that's why this pastime is called the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Materially born persons cannot fully understand Krishna. Even the demigods cannot understand him. Everyone, from Brahma down to the small insect, must take lessons from Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that one should not claim that Brahma's power of illusion could actually exert influence over omniscient Krishna and his dear cowherd boys. Brahma's power of illusion put the boys to sleep, but this was allowed only for the purpose of Krishna's pastimes. In actuality, the cowherd boys were put to sleep by Krishna's Yoga Maya potency. And Sukadev Goswami would not describe the real cowherd boys as being created by the external energy. It is proper to say that Brahma had stolen some other forms of boys created by the external energy. The boys and calves that Brahma stole were created by Maya. Since that Maya arises from the Lord's Maya, one could say that everything was under the Lord's Maya. Bewildered by the Lord's energy, Brahma stole the calves and boys created by Maya in order to see Krishna's power. Thus, when Brahma desired to steal the boys and calves, Yoga Maya hid the real boys and calves, and Mahamaya instantly produced exact replicas for Brahma to steal. And another point is that Lord Balaram was not here that day. He had stayed back because it was his birthday and his mother wanted to have offerings and to celebrate it in an auspicious way. So he didn't actually get stolen. And he didn't know anything that had happened for the whole year because Krishna also allowed him to be covered by Yoga Maya. So let's continue reading. Therefore, in order to satisfy the mothers of his friends, as well as to convince Brahma of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, he immediately expanded himself as the cowherd boys and calves. In the Vedas, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has already expanded himself into so many living entities by his energy. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Therefore, it was not very difficult for him to expand himself again into so many boys and calves. He expanded himself to become exactly like the boys, who were of all different features and facial and bodily constructions, and who were different in their clothing and ornaments and in their behavior and personal activities. In other words, although each boy, being an individual soul, had entirely different tastes, activities, and behavior, Krishna exactly expanded himself into all the different positions of the individual boys. He also became the calves, who were also of different sizes, colors, activities, etc. This was possible because everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said, Parasya Brahmana Shakti. Whatever we actually see in the cosmic manifestation, be it matter or the activities of the living entities, is simply an expansion of the energies of the Lord, as heat and light are the different expansions of fire. Thus, expanding himself as the boys and calves in their individual capacities, and surrounded by such expansions of himself, Krishna entered the village of Vrindavan. The residents had no knowledge of what had happened. After entering the village of Vrindavan, all the calves entered their respective cowsheds, and the boys went to their respective mothers and homes. The mothers of the boys heard the vibration of their flutes before their entrance, and to receive them, they came out of their homes and embraced them. And out of maternal affection, milk was flowing from their breasts, and they allowed the boys to drink it. However, their offering was not exactly to their boys, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had expanded himself into such boys. This was a chance for all the mothers of Vrindavan to feed the Supreme Personality of Godhead with their own milk. So all the elderly gopis of the village desired to have Krishna as their son. And now they got the opportunity to feed him, bathe him, decorate him, and serve him as their son. So Krishna fulfilled all of their desires by this pastime. Therefore, not only did Lord Krishna give Yashoda the chance to feed him, but this time he gave the chance to all the other elder gopis. All the boys dealt with their mothers as usual, and the mothers also, on the approach of evening, bathed their respective children, decorated them with tilak and ornaments, and gave them necessary food after the day's labor. The cows also, who had been away in the pasturing ground, returned in the evening and called their respective calves. The calves immediately came to their mothers, and the mothers began to lick the bodies of the calves. These relations of the cows and the gopis with their calves and the boys remained unchanged, although actually the original calves and boys were not there. Actually, the cows' affection for their calves and the elder gopis' affection for their boys causelessly increased. Their affection increased naturally, even though the calves and boys were not their offspring. Although the cows and elder gopis of Vrindavan had greater affection for Krishna than for their own offspring, after this incident, their affection for their offspring increased unlimitedly, exactly as it did for Krishna. For 1 year continuously, Krishna himself expanded as the calves and cowherd boys and was present in the pasturing ground. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's expansion is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. Similarly, instead of expanding himself as the Supersoul, he expanded himself as the portion of calves and cowherd boys for 1 continuous year. So this is an interesting point, that all the gopis had more affection for Krishna than their own children. That is the opposite of what we experience here. Everybody loves their own children more than anyone else's children. But in the spiritual world, everybody loves Krishna the most. So here it's considered selfless if we can love another's child the same way we love our own child. That's an extraordinary level of love and selflessness. In the spiritual world, the gopis finally loved their own children the same way they loved Krishna, because that was actually Krishna. And nobody understood why they were loving their own children and why the cows were loving their calves as much as they loved Krishna, because Krishna covered everyone with his Yoga Maya potency. One day, a few days before a year had passed, Krishna and Balaram were maintaining the calves in the forest when they saw some cows grazing on the top of Govardhan Hill. The cows could see down into the valley where the calves were being taken care of by the boys. Suddenly, on sighting the calves began to run toward them. They leaped downhill with joined front and rear legs. The cows were so melted with affection for the calves that they did not care about the rough path from the top of Govardhan Hill down to the pasturing ground. They approached the calves with their milk bags full of milk, and they raised their tails upwards. When they were coming down the hill, their milk bags were pouring milk on the ground out of intense maternal affection for the calves, although they were not their own calves. These cows had their own calves, and the calves that were grazing beneath Govardhan Hill were larger. They were not expected to drink milk directly from the milk bag, but were satisfied with the grass. Yet all the cows came immediately and began to lick their bodies, and the calves also began to suck milk from the milk bags. There appeared to be a great bond of affection between the cows and the calves. When the cows were running down from the top of Govardhan Hill, the men who were taking care of them tried to stop them. Older cows were taken care of by the men, and the calves are taken care of by the boys. And as far as possible, the calves are kept separate from the cows, so that the calves do not drink all the available milk. Therefore, the men who were taking care of the cows on the top of Govardhan Hill tried to stop them, but they failed. Baffled by their failure, they were feeling ashamed and angry. They were very unhappy, but when they came down and saw their children taking care of the calves, they all of a sudden became very affectionate toward the children. It was very astonishing. Although the men came down disappointed, baffled, and angry, as soon as they saw their own children, their hearts melted with great affection. At once their anger, dissatisfaction, and unhappiness disappeared. They began to show paternal love for the children, and with great affection they lifted them in their arms and embraced them. They began to smell their children's heads and enjoy their company with great happiness. After embracing their children, the men took the cows back to the top of Govardhan Hill. Along the way, they began to think of their children, and affectionate tears fell from their eyes. When Balaram saw this extraordinary exchange of affection between the cows and the calves, and between the fathers and their children, when neither the calves nor the children needed so much care, he began to wonder why this extraordinary thing had happened. He was astonished to see all the residents of Vrindavan so affectionate to their own children, exactly as they had been to Krishna. Similarly, the cows had grown affectionate to the calves, as much as to Krishna. Balaram therefore concluded that the extraordinary show of affection was something mystical, either performed by the demigods or by some powerful man. Otherwise, how could this wonderful change take place? He concluded that this mystical change must have been caused by Krishna, whom Balaram considered his worshipable personality of Godhead. He thought, it was arranged by Krishna, and even I could not check its mystic power. Thus Balaram understood that all those boys and calves were only expansions of Krishna. So this sight of the cows running down to see their calves, who were actually older, it said that the cows had newer calves that were born within that year that should be taking the milk. But these were not those calves. These were the older calves who were actually Krishna, and they were running to feed them milk, and the older cows didn't need milk, but because of that affection they wanted to feed the older calves' milk because they were Krishna. And it said that they were, licking them like as if they're going to swallow the calves because it's so much affection. And even the cowherd men, they saw their sons and they were smelling their heads and just filled with affection. And for Balaram, it must be odd because you're seeing this great display of affection which you didn't see all the other days. But actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Balaram was covered over and Krishna gradually removed his Yoga Maya potency from Lord Balaram. And that's how, for the whole year until 6 days before the 1 year was up, Balaram didn't notice this because this was happening. This extraordinary show of affection was happening, but Balaram didn't notice it, and none of the residents of Vrindavan noticed it. So, when Prabhupada translated this verse, he said, initially Balaram thought these cowherd boys must be great sages or demigods, but then he knew that they could only be the energy of Krishna. Who else can bewilder me? Balaram said this. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is asking, why did Balaram realize this now, after seeing it for so many days? And why didn't the other cowherd men even notice this? It was because they were all covered by Yoga Maya from the day of the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Therefore, even though they saw the strange behavior of the cows, Baladev, the gopis and the gopas did not think to investigate it. Baladev is the elder brother of the cause of the universe and his dear friend, so Krishna should not have deceived him. Though Krishna should have revealed everything to Baladev before this, he did not, because he did not want Balaram to suffer any separation from Sridham and his other friends for the period of a year. So that answers the question, why would Krishna cover Balaram over? It's because of that bond of friendship with Balaram and the other cowherd boys. He didn't want him to know that they were actually Krishna beforehand. Then, after a year passed, when the Lord desired, Yogamaya gradually withdrew her cover from Balaram. It was done gradually so that Baladev could take the viewpoint of the devotee and also immerse him in the ocean of the Lord's power. So that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is the reason for Krishna covering Balaram and then gradually removing the covering. Balaram inquired from Krishna about the actual situation. He said, "My dear Krishna, in the beginning I thought that all these calves and cowherd boys were either great sages and saintly persons or demigods. But at present, it appears that they are actually your expansions. They are all you. You yourself are playing as the calves and boys. What is the mystery of this situation? Where have all those other calves and boys gone? And why are you expanding yourself as the calves and boys? Will you kindly tell me what is the cause?" At the request of Balaram, Krishna briefly explained the whole situation, how the calves and boys had been stolen by Brahma, and how Krishna was concealing the incident by expanding himself so people would not know that the original calves and boys were missing. While Krishna and Balaram were talking, Brahma returned after a moment's interval, according to the duration of his life. We have information of Lord Brahma's duration of life from the Bhagavad Gita, 1,000 times the duration of the 4 ages, or 1,000 times 4,320,000 years, constitute Brahma's 12 hours. Similarly, 1 moment of Brahma's time is equal to 1 year of our solar calculation. After 1 moment of Brahma's calculation, Brahma came back to see the fun caused by his stealing the boys and calves. But he was also afraid that he was playing with fire. Krishna was his master, and he had played mischief for fun by taking away his calves and boys. He was really anxious, so he did not stay away very long. He came back after a moment by his calculation. He saw that all the boys and calves were playing with Krishna in the same way as when he had come upon them, although he was confident that he had taken them and made them lie down asleep under the spell of his mystic power. Brahma began to think, all the boys and calves were taken away by me, and I know they are still sleeping. How is it that a similar batch of boys and calves is playing with Krishna? Is it that they are not influenced by my mystic power? Have they been playing continually for 1 year with Krishna? Brahma tried to understand who they were and how they were uninfluenced by his mystic power, but he could not ascertain it. In other words, he himself came under the spell of his own mystic power. The influence of his mystic power appeared like snow in darkness or a glowworm in the daytime. During the night's darkness, the glowworm can show some glittering power, and the snow piled up on the top of a hill or on the ground can shine during the daytime. But at night, the snow has no silver glitter, nor does the glowworm have any illuminating power during the daytime. Similarly, when the small mystic power exhibited by Brahma was before the mystic power of Krishna, it was just like snow at night or a glowworm during the day. When a man of small mystic power wants to show potency in the presence of greater mystic powers, he diminishes his own influence. He does not increase it. Even such a great personality as Brahma, when he wanted to show his mystic power before Krishna, became ludicrous. Brahma was thus confused about his own mystic power. So, Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur described that when Brahma saw the duplicates, he was shocked. He was wondering, who are they? Who are the boys and calves that I have stolen and put into mystic sleep? And who are these boys and calves? Are these the real ones, and the other ones are created by the external energy, or are those the real ones and these ones have been created by the external energy? Or is there just one set of boys and calves and Krishna takes them and puts them into the sleep when he's there, and then when he leaves, he brings them back out? So Brahma was continuously thinking like this and didn't know what, and he kept going back and forth but couldn't ascertain what happened. And Prabhupada translates the verse so nicely. Thus, because Lord Brahma wanted to mystify the all-pervading Lord Krishna, who can never be mystified, but who, on the contrary, mystifies the entire universe, he himself was put into bewilderment by his own mystic power. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that Brahma was not bewildered by his own energy. Brahma was bewildered in a special way. The reason for this extreme bewilderment was Brahma's great offense in attempting to use his powers to mystify the Lord. One should not think that Brahma was bewildered by his own Maya, because Maya does not have the power to bewilder its shelter. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is clarifying that it was due to his mentality, Brahma's intention to trick the Lord, that he ended up getting tricked. But it wasn't by his own power, it was by the intention of his activities that Krishna bewildered him. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to this verse that this is actually the mentality of how the scientists are challenging God. They are trying to challenge God's supremacy and God's power. And Prabhupada said, rather, instead of endeavoring to surpass him, we should surrender to him. Instead of defeating Krishna, Brahma himself was defeated. When one wants to supersede a superior power, one's own inferior power becomes ludicrous. So we'll continue reading. In order to convince Brahma that all those calves and boys were not the original ones, the calves and boys who were playing with Krishna transformed into Vishnu forms. Actually, the original ones were sleeping under the spell of Brahma's mystic power. But the present ones, seen by Brahma, were all immediate expansions of Krishna or Vishnu. Vishnu is the expansion of Krishna, so the Vishnu forms appeared before Brahma. All the Vishnu forms were of bluish color and dressed in yellow garments. All of them had 4 hands, decorated with club, disc, lotus flower, and conch shell. On their heads were glittering golden helmets inlaid with jewels. They were bedecked with pearls and earrings and garlanded with beautiful flowers. On their chests was the mark of Srivatsa. Their arms were decorated with armlets and other jewelry, and their necks were just like conch shells. Their legs were decorated with bells, their waists with golden belts, and their fingers with jeweled rings. Brahma also saw that upon the whole body of each Lord Vishnu, from the lotus feet up to the top of the head, fresh tulsi leaves and buds had been thrown. Another significant feature of the Vishnu forms was that all of them were looking transcendently beautiful. Their smiling resembled the moonshine, and their glancing resembled the early rising of the sun. Just by their glancing, they showed themselves to be the creators and maintainers of the modes of ignorance and passion. Vishnu represents the modes of goodness, Brahma represents the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva represents the mode of ignorance. Therefore, as the maintainer of everything in the cosmic manifestation, Vishnu is also the creator and maintainer of Brahma and Lord Shiva. After this manifestation of Lord Vishnu, Brahma saw that many other Brahmas and Shivas and demigods and even insignificant living entities down to the ants and very small straws, all moving and non-moving living entities, were dancing, surrounding Lord Vishnu. Their dancing was accompanied by various kinds of music, and all of them were worshipping Lord Vishnu. Brahma realized that all those Vishnu forms were complete in mystic power, from the anima perfection of becoming small like an atom, up to becoming infinite like the cosmic manifestation. All the mystic powers of Brahma, Shiva, all the demigods, and the 24 elements of cosmic manifestation were fully represented in the person of Vishnu. By the influence of Lord Vishnu, all subordinate mystic powers were engaged in his worship. He was being worshipped by time, space, the cosmic manifestation, reformation, desire, activity, and the 3 qualities of material nature. Lord Vishnu, Brahma also realized, is the reservoir of all truth, knowledge, and bliss. He is the combination of 3 transcendental features, namely eternity, knowledge, and bliss, and he is the object of worship by the followers of the Upanishads. Brahma realized that all the different forms of boys and calves transformed into Vishnu forms were not transformed by mysticism of the type that a yogi or demigod can display by specific powers invested in him. The calves and boys transformed into Vishnu Murtis or Vishnu forms were not displays of Vishnu Maya or Vishnu's energy, but were Vishnu himself. The respective qualifications of Vishnu and Vishnu Maya are just like fire and heat. In the heat there is the qualification of fire, namely warmth, and yet heat is not fire. The manifestation of the Vishnu forms of the boys and calves was not like the heat, but was rather the fire. They were all actually Vishnu. Factually, the qualification of Vishnu is full truth, full knowledge, and full bliss. Another example can be given with material objects, which are reflected in many, many forms. For example, the sun is reflected in many water pots, but the reflections of the sun in the many pots are not actually the sun. There is no actual heat or light from the suns in the pots, although they appear like the sun. But the forms which Krishna assumed were each and every one full Vishnu. The specific word used in this connection is Satya Jnanantanandana. Satya means truth, Jnana, full knowledge, Ananta, unlimited, and Ananda, full bliss. The glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are so great that the impersonalistic followers of the Upanishads cannot reach the platform of knowledge to understand them. Especially the transcendental forms of the Lord are beyond the reach of the impersonalists, who can only understand through studying the Upanishads that the absolute truth is not matter or is not materially restricted. From Krishna's expansion into Vishnu forms, Lord Brahma could understand by his limited potency that everything movable and immovable within the cosmic manifestation is existing due to the expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. When Brahma was thus standing baffled in his limited power and conscious of his limited activities within the 11 senses, he could realize that he was also a creation of the material energy, just like a puppet. As a puppet has no independent power to dance, but dances according to the direction of the puppet master, so the demigods and living entities are all subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As it is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the only master is Krishna, and all others are his servants. The whole world is under the waves of the material spell, and beings are floating like straws in water. So their struggle for existence is continuing. But as soon as one becomes conscious that he is the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Maya, or illusory struggle for existence, is immediately stopped. Lord Brahma, who has full control over the goddess of learning and who is considered to be the best authority in Vedic knowledge, was thus perplexed, being unable to understand the extraordinary power manifested by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the mundane world, even a personality like Brahma is unable to understand the mystic power of the Supreme Lord. Not only did Brahma fail to understand, but he was perplexed even to see the display which was being manifested by Krishna before him. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that Lord Brahma is the husband of Saraswati, who is the goddess of learning. So he is actually the most learned, but even he got bewildered. Krishna took compassion upon Brahma because of his inability to see how Krishna was displaying the forms of Vishnu and transforming himself into calves and cowherd boys. And thus, while fully manifesting the Vishnu expansions, he suddenly pulled his curtain of Yoga Maya over the scene. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not visible due to the curtain spread by Yoga Maya. That which covers the reality is Mahamaya, or the external energy, which does not allow a conditioned soul to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead beyond the cosmic manifestation. But the energy which partially manifests the Supreme Personality of Godhead and partially does not allow one to see is called Yoga Maya. Brahma is not an ordinary conditioned soul. He is far, far superior to all the other demigods, and yet he could not comprehend the display of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Krishna willingly stopped manifesting any further potency. The conditioned soul not only becomes bewildered, but is completely unable to understand. The curtain of Yoga Maya was drawn so that Brahma would not become more and more perplexed. When Brahma was relieved from his perplexity, he appeared to awaken from an almost dead state, and he began to open his eyes with great difficulty. Thus he could see the external cosmic manifestation with common eyes. He saw all around him the super excellent view of Vrindavan, full with trees, which is the source of life for all living entities. He could appreciate the transcendental land of Vrindavan, where all the living entities are transcendental to ordinary nature. In the forest of Vrindavan, even ferocious animals like tigers live peacefully along with the deer and human beings. He could understand that because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vrindavan is transcendental to all other places and is free of lust and greed. Srila Prabhupada describes this in this beautiful verse, the description of Vrindavan. And in the purport, he mentions how Vrindavan is a place where even naturally inimical entities like animals and human beings all are friends. They all work together to serve Krishna. And the center is Krishna, and everybody loves Krishna. And he describes it for quite a while about Vrindavan and its beauty. And then Prabhupada mentions Durban, South Africa in this purport, which is one of the last purports. It's actually the fourth last purport that Srila Prabhupada translated and commented on while being on this planet. And he says, Vrindavan, so the verse is, Vrindavan is the transcendental abode of the Lord, where there is no hunger, anger, or thirst. Though naturally inimical, both human beings and fierce animals live there together in transcendental friendship. And Prabhupada writes, in the material world, one may collect funds all over the world in order to distribute food freely. Yet those to whom the food is given may not even feel appreciative. The value of Krishna consciousness, however, will gradually be very much appreciated. For instance, in an article about the temple of the Hare Krishna movement in Durban, South Africa, the Durban Post reported, all the devotees here are very active in the service of Lord Krishna, and the results are obvious to see. Happiness, good health, peace of mind, and the development of all good qualities. This is the nature of Vrindavan. Without Krishna consciousness, happiness is impossible. One may struggle, but one cannot have happiness. We are therefore trying to give human society the opportunity for a life of happiness, good health, peace of mind, and all good qualities through God consciousness. So it's very nice that Srila Prabhupada thought of South Africa in his final days and translated it and connected this temple to this very exalted purport of the description of Vrindavan, and how there's natural appreciation, natural cooperation, natural friendship, all for the service of Krishna. And he was trying to say that in the material world, you can't find such a situation where there's this natural appreciation and cooperation except in Krishna consciousness. Immediately Brahma descended from his great swan. Oh, sorry, I missed a paragraph. Brahma thus found Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the part of a small cowherd boy. He saw that little child with the lump of food in his left hand, searching out his friends and calves, just as he had actually been doing 1 year before, after their disappearance. Immediately Brahma descended from his great swan carrier and fell down before the Lord just like a golden stick. The word used among the Vaishnavas for offering respect is dandavat. This word means falling down like a stick. One should offer respect to the superior Vaishnava by falling down straight, with his body just like a stick. So Brahma fell down before the Lord just like a stick to offer respect, and because the complexion of Brahma is golden, he appeared to be like a golden stick lying down before Lord Krishna. All the 4 helmets on the heads of Brahma touched the lotus feet of Krishna. Brahma, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the lotus feet of Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly he fell and rose as he recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord. After repeating obeisances for a long time, Brahma stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Seeing the Lord before him, he, trembling, began to offer prayers with great respect, humility, and attention. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 13th chapter of Krishna, the stealing of the boys and calves by Brahma. So this ends the chapter, and it leads into the next chapter, which is a very amazing chapter. Brahma's prayers to Krishna are the most famous and beautiful prayers. And I wanted to note a point that in the purport of verse 62, Prabhupada states that Lord Brahma offered dandavats, and usually the demigods don't touch the ground, but by coming down and touching the ground, he gave up his prestige as a demigod. So he gave up that pride and surrendered to Krishna. And just the last points I'll make before ending, because I know we're a little bit over time. In the Chaitanya Shikshamrita by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's a description of the demons of Vrindavan and the anarthas in our hearts they represent. And it is said that when we read the pastimes of Krishna, then that destroys those anarthas in our hearts, those specific anarthas. So this pastime isn't really a demon per se, but it is there is an anartha being represented here, which is fruitive activity, speculative knowledge, and disrespecting the Lord's Madhurya feature in favor of his Aishvarya feature. So reading this pastime will free us from fruitive activity, speculative knowledge, and it rectifies the offense of disrespecting the Lord's Madhurya feature in favor of his Aishvarya feature. It was a bit tricky for me to understand, but it makes sense because Lord Brahma considered that Krishna should be powerful. If he's God, he should have that Aishvarya feature, the opulence. He should appear to be God. So in a way, he was kind of disrespecting the Madhurya feature, which is the sweetness, the love, the exchanges and friendship. So this is setting us straight that we shouldn't disrespect the Madhurya feature. And also Brahma was in this speculative knowledge, kind of figuring things out, trying to understand how is he doing this, which cowherd boys are these, and just not understanding the situation at all. And we find that when we try to understand anything about Krishna, we can't. We're all baffled because he's inconceivable, achintya. So I'll end by just quoting what Prabhupada quotes, which is a verse from Padyavali by Rupa Goswami in the second last purport that Prabhupada ever translated. He said, "Let others study the Vedas, Smriti and Mahabharat, fearing material existence. But I shall worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard is crawling the Supreme Brahman. Nanda Maharaj is so great that the Para Brahman is crawling in his yard, and therefore I shall worship him." Thank you. Hare Krishna. What happens now? Is there a question? Or is there like a time limit? We can have a question. Okay. If there's any questions, I don't know if I'll be able to answer them. Just disclaimer. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Ribo.